Tonight, we're live from the Logan Entertainment Centre in Queensland for a special program with the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers. In the wake of his budget, he's been quizzed by the opposition and the press gallery in Canberra. Now he's agreed to be quizzed by you. Do his priorities match yours? Housing, cost of living and domestic violence, nothing's off limits. Welcome to Q&A. Hello, I'm Patricia Karvelas, and I'd like to welcome Jim Chalmers to the show. Treasurer, welcome to the program.
It's very good of you and your team, Patricia, to come out to our local community. I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone when I say thanks very much.
Absolutely, and I can't wait till I ask you some questions. I want to pay my respects to the Yagara and Yunganbia people on whose land we are meeting tonight. You can live stream us around the country on iView, and you can join our live blog on the ABC News website. Go to abc.net.au/news and you can send in your questions, something new we're trying, to get us started tonight. Here's a question from Natalie Corlas. Hi, Natalie.
Hello, good evening. Look, I love a sunburnt country. I love a multicultural country. But can the government please explain to me how the migration numbers are good for our economy when it adds to our housing crisis?
Jim.
Well, thanks very much, Natalie, for your question. Obviously, this is very topical at the moment, given the events of the last week or so. What we saw in our migration system was after COVID, the international students and the long-term tourists came back faster and in greater numbers than people anticipated. And so that did create a temporary spike in what's called the net overseas migration number. The good news for anybody who would like to see that return to more normal levels is that net overseas migration next year will be half what it was last year. And in addition to that, the government is winding down the permanent migration numbers as well, from 190 where they are to 185,000. And when it comes to housing, I know that there is concern in the community about a lack of housing and about congestion, and all of these things are legitimate things to be worried about, and we are too, and that's why we're investing billions and billions of dollars in building homes for Australians to make it easier to build and rent and buy, and also investing substantially in local infrastructure.
Okay, and Natalie, I'd just love to hear your perspective. Would you like to see immigration levels lower?
I would like to see the numbers lowered while we fix this housing crisis.
Okay, and Treasurer, you are lowering them, but not as much, and that's the elephant in the room as the opposition leader has announced. Are you willing to go lower? Why have you decided on the figure you've decided on?
Well, there are two important differences between the way that we're going about it and the way that the opposition leader has proposed. Now, first of all, and probably the main difference is we're doing it in a responsible and considered and methodical way, an evidence-based way that says that we can get net overseas migration down by ending the pandemic visa and making sure that students come here are legitimately students and not using it as another way into the country. That's the responsible, methodical way to go about it. And the alternative is what I think on Thursday night was an opposition leader who didn't want to tell you where the nuclear reactors are going to go, didn't want to tell you how he's going to pay for all of his promises by attacking Medicare again or coming after pensions and payments again, and so he pulled a number out of the air. Now, I'll give you one thing which makes that last point that I was making very clear. When Peter Dutton was the immigration minister of this country, he had the permanent intake higher than what we've set in the budget. And I think that goes to the fact that he is looking for reasons to be divisive, I think dangerous. We are being responsible and methodical and considered in getting those numbers down.
Quick question from me. The Grattan Institute says it will cost $34 billion over coming decades. That's Peter Dutton's plan. Is that what Treasury estimates as well?
Oh, well, we do numbers on our own policies.
So you don't know if it's $34 billion?
We are pretty confident that what Peter Dutton is proposing will cost billions of dollars to the economy, but that doesn't even capture the attack on the skills base of this country, the fact that we need nurses, we need builders.
Okay, so let me just pick you up on that. So if you're also lowering the immigration rate, will it also cost the economy billions?
We're not proposing to lower it, the permanent intake, by as much as he is, and that goes to Natalie's question a moment ago, but we are lowering it.
And will it cost the budget, just like you say his proposal will?
No, because what we're talking about is making sure we've got the skills that we need in our hospitals and on our building sites. You know, in a perfect world, you know, we would have a labour market, a labour force, which would build the homes that we need and look after people in our hospitals and in our aged care. But the reality is we need a combination. We need to train people, big priority in the budget, millions of dollars invested in training. But we also need to have a migration system where we get those numbers down, but where we manage it in a responsible and methodical and considered way, and not the kind of divisive way that our opponents are going about it.
Thanks for your question. A lot of you had concerns about the housing situation, and nationwide, most Australians say they are worried government doesn't have the answers. That's according to an exclusive YouGov survey commissioned by Q&A in the wake of the budget, with just a quarter of those polled expressing any level of confidence that the spending will deliver secure and affordable housing. More results from that poll later in the show, and full results on the ABC News website. But Treasurer, you've allocated billions to housing, and yet our poll showed that people don't think it's going to have the impact it should. Does that worry you?
Oh, I'm pretty realistic about those polls after budgets. I've learned to be realistic about them. But what I would say to anyone who's worried, as we are, about a lack of housing in our local communities, including, frankly, our own local community, is that we invested more money in building homes on Tuesday night than in all of the 9 budgets of our predecessors combined. And that, I hope, is a demonstration of our willingness to come at this problem in a meaningful way. You know, $6 billion new dollars in the budget, $32 billion of investment. We've only been here for 2 years. And that is because we recognise, first of all, there are too many people sleeping in cars. There are too many people sleeping in tents, including across the street here. And we don't have enough homes. And the housing pipeline is not what we need it to be. And we don't have enough builders and construction workers. We've got a lot of catching up to do after a decade of neglect. And so much of what we are trying to do in the budget and with our billions and billions of dollars of investment is to build more homes for Australians, to make it easier to rent and build and buy, because we've got a housing shortage in this country, and it will only be dealt with Commonwealth investment, involvement from states and local governments and territories, and by making sure that we get the labour force right, the skills base right in this country as well.
Okay. Next, we'll hear from Jessica Whitby.
Hi, my partner and I, we're first home buyers, and on the weekend we watched an auction for a basic property in the traditionally affordable suburb of Woodridge, just around the corner from here at the LEC, go for over $670,000, which is pretty unaffordable for most first home buyers, even with the grants and schemes available. With a competitive property market only pushing prices up, will your government disincentivise people who are purchasing multiple investment properties to assist first home buyers to get into the market sooner?
Yeah. I appreciate your question. I think it reflects 2 things. First of all, house prices are going up, and we are concerned, as you are, that owning your own home is becoming out of reach, or has become out of reach for too many people, and that's why we need to build substantially more homes. I think your question also about Woodridge in particular reflects the fact that people are discovering how close we are to the city and the Gold Coast, and what a great place it is to live here in Logan City and in the southern suburbs of Brisbane. There is no substitute, whether it's in the tax system, whether it's other changes people have been proposing in recent days, there's no substitute for building more homes. And we want to build 1.2 million new homes in the 5 years from July this year. That's what our investment's about. It's what local governments and states' investment is about. The industry is on board, the super funds and others, because we think that is a better way of making it easier for people to find somewhere to buy or somewhere to rent. Is to boost supply in our economy, and that's our priority, and not some of those tax changes which have been floated in the past.
Jessica, would you like to see changes to the tax policies around housing?
I mean, I'd definitely like to see, I think, more action than just building new homes. My partner and I, a house and land package, even with the grants and schemes, pushes us into borderline mortgage stress, and that's just starting as a first home. We're already looking to the regions of Logan, Moreton Bay, Redlands for affordable housing, and a lot of the new supply is going further out where there's no infrastructure. So I think we'd really love to see some support to actually get us into the market, into existing homes in the suburbs we grew up in, that our family and friends are living in, that we are close to our jobs. And yeah,
Do you feel like it's out of reach for you, Jessica? Is that how you're feeling at the moment?
I think my partner and I both feel like there's a big sense of dread around if we wait any longer, it will be out of reach. You know, our families are constantly trying to come up with ways to help us, help our siblings get into the market, because we do worry that, you know, if we don't get in the next 6 to 12 months, that boat will sail and we will be renting, and that is just as difficult as owning your own home. If we were to drop buying and to try and find a rental, it is just as expensive and just as difficult because the market is just as tight.
So, Treasurer, I know you've said you don't want to look at changing the tax. You've said it a zillion times to me in the many times we've talked. But clearly some voters are feeling like the supply answer that you're providing isn't enough. Is it worth revisiting that kind of proposal from Jessica?
Oh, that's not what we're looking to do, and that's not, I don't mean to be disrespectful to Jessica's proposal. Obviously, we listen respectfully when people put those kind of ideas to us, but the only thing that will simultaneously solve the issues in the rental market and the issues in the market for people to buy their first home, in your instance, is to build more homes. There is no easy way. There is no substitute to building more homes. We've got to get the planning right. We've got to get the small infrastructure right, the big infrastructure right. We need to work with the states and territories and work with the industry and work with the investors to make that possible for more of you.
Now, we're going to keep this discussion going with a question from Rafe Foster. Hi, Rafe.
Mr. Chalmers, your budget focuses on housing supply but ignores demand conditions. The buying power of working individuals, young families, single parents and pensioners is being suffocated by that of wealthy property investors incentivised by negative gearing and capital gains tax concessions. How can the Labor Party claim to represent the working class while maintaining policies that undermine their access to affordable housing?
So, Treasurer, really a similar kind of question, really. So there's a bit of a theme. Obviously, there is a real push from young people for some of these changes.
Yeah, it's a very similar question, and my answer is a very similar answer. The only thing that I would add to that is when you talk about adding to demand or demand management in the housing market, we've talked about supply. There are issues around demand as well. You know, one of the maddest things that you could do is let people access their super for housing, because that would mean 2 or 3 more people, you know, at every auction. And so we are attentive to the demand side as well. We're not attracted to some of the changes that you're proposing and Jessica was proposing in her question a moment ago. But I don't accept, not for 1 second, that there is a lack of commitment or enthusiasm for improving the housing market for everyone, but especially for young people. The only thing that will simultaneously address the issues with renters and the issues with buyers is we need more homes. Vacancy rates are far too low and rents are far too high and prices are out of reach for too many people. And we've got an issue with homelessness. The only thing that will solve all of those things is to build much more housing, and that's what the budget was about.
So, Rafe, that's the government's answer. They want to supply, 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 right? And they say, of course, that will help because there won't be as much competition for houses. Does that satisfy you that that will provide a solution?
No, absolutely not. That's a deeply unsatisfying answer. To say the very least, the simple fact of the matter is adding to supply is fantastic, and there's no doubt to be made that we don't need that supply. We absolutely do. But what restrictions is your government going to put into place from stopping arguably greedy property investors from capitalising on this additional supply to further push down the working man from attaining a home?
Hey, Rafe, or the working woman. There's many of them here. Treasurer, many working women in your electorate as well.
Yeah, we want to build more homes for them.
You're not about to announce changes to negative gearing, but do you feel like there is, be honest with me, in the community, more of a push for this from young people at the moment?
I think there is certainly a push, and Rafe's question and Jessica's question reflects that. And all of us who move around this community and the communities of South East Queensland know that there is a level of frustration when it comes to finding homes. And, you know, at the risk of repeating myself again, the only way to fix that is to build many, many more homes. and that's our intention.
Okay, back to our poll now. We asked Australians if they could identify anything in the budget that would make them financially better off. Almost half of those polled could not, and a number even higher among young voters of those who couldn't. For those that could, most could name the $300 power bill rebate as a budget benefit ahead of tax cuts. Jim Chalmers, after a week of selling your budget, does that surprise you? Obviously, the $300 rebate has really resonated.
Yeah, I'm a bit more glass half full than you, Patricia. I see that as 50% of people do know that there's something in the budget that, that will help them. And that's because the budget was overwhelmingly designed to ease the cost of living pressures that people are feeling in our communities, our community here, but communities right around Australia. And so there is a tax cut for every taxpayer. There is energy bill relief for every household, but there's also increased rent assistance, there's cheaper medicines. There are a whole range of measures and initiatives in the budget to try and take some of the sting out of these cost of living pressures that people are feeling.
Now, I know so many of you have questions, so don't despair. Next, we'll hear from Esther Swamborough. Hi, Esther.
Hi. With small business being such a significant % of the Australian economy, why weren't they considered in the budget? Business is drowning in ATO debt and liquidations are increasing. So where is the support similar to the cash flow boost? Increasing the value of the immediate asset write-off won't help immediate cash flow pressure.
Yeah, thanks, Esther, and thanks for representing the views that you pick up around the place from all of our wonderful local small businesses. You're right to say that in the budget there was an extension of the instant asset write-off. I know that that's a slightly different issue to the one that you are raising, but I think it does show our willingness to invest, in that case, hundreds of millions of dollars in tax relief for small businesses to help them make the investments that they need to grow and succeed in local communities right around Australia. In terms of cash flow and managing things like tax debts, there has been an important change made, which is about how the tax office goes about recovering the debts that were accumulated before 2017. And what we've done is we've empowered the tax office to exercise its judgment to not chase some of those debts from all of those years ago, where maybe the communication of that tax debt wasn't as good as it can be. And so we are very alive to and very attentive to the pressures on small business. There's energy bill relief for small business. There's the extension of the instant asset write-off. There's the empowering the ATO to be reasonable with tax debts. And all of these things, I think, recognise from our point of view the central role that you play in our economy and in our communities.
Thank you for your question. Next, we'll hear from Amir Ghafoor. Hi, Amir.
Hi, how's it going? Hi, Jim.
Hi, Amir.
Rankin's a very diverse electorate. Do you believe you're adequately representing the concerns of your constituents, particularly those who are deeply affected by the ongoing conflict in Gaza? You've been relatively muted on your stance on the issue, and it has left a lot of us feeling unheard and unsupported. We've tried to make you aware of our frustrations, including picketing your office in Logan and hosting rallies in the area. Do you believe it is more important to fulfill your duties as a treasurer or to actively represent the voices of the people who have elected you?
Thanks, Amir. Jim Chalmers.
Thanks very much, Amir. I don't see them as two different things. You know, I see my first responsibility to you all, and because of your support, it allows me to do my work at the national level as well. And so I don't see them as different jobs. I see them as two parts of the same job. I'm very grateful, Amir, for the way that you've raised that and the frankness with which you have raised it. I do know that there are a lot of people in our community who are hurting because of the tensions in the Middle East. I do acknowledge that. And I have been to our local mosques to speak with community leaders about the very real concerns that they have about what's happening in Gaza. There has been too much killing of innocent people in Gaza.
Yep. We'll just let the Treasurer finish his question.
There has been the killing of too many innocent people in Gaza, and we have made it very clear, and I have made it very clear whenever I'm asked. I'm not asked that often, but whenever I am asked, we want to see a humanitarian ceasefire. We want to see the hostages released. We want to see the aid go in, and we want to see an enduring, peaceful two-state solution in that part of the world. But to finish where I began, Amir, you know, I do know, and I hear it in your question, and I hear it in hundreds of conversations I have in our local community. I know how much people are hurting, and I am representing the whole community in all of the ways that I can, because we need to bring this killing of innocent civilians to an end.
Jim Chalmers, the ICC has sought arrest warrants against the Hamas leader Sinwar and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. That's a story that's broken tonight. Some of you may have missed it, but that's a very big international story just broken by CNN. Do you respect that decision by the ICC, and do you think that that should go ahead?
Well, obviously that will be a matter for the International Court. We're not party to that process, and as you would know with your long experience of these sorts of matters, those processes happen on their own steam. Our focus, as I said in response to Amir's question, our focus is in using our voice in all of the international forums that we have, the UN, talking with like-minded friends around the world, is to get that release of hostages, to get that humanitarian ceasefire, to get the aid in.
Sinwar and Netanyahu being put on the same platform for an arrest warrant is obviously a pretty significant move. Do you see Netanyahu as a war criminal?
Oh, look.
It's a question.
Yeah. This answer won't satisfy people up the back there, but I don't intend to get into a process which involves the International Court. We're not party to that.
Yep.
Obviously, it is a big deal, as you say. It is a very significant development. Our focus is on using our voice for all of the objectives that I mentioned in response to Amir.
Thanks, Amir. I appreciate your question. And can I just say, really appreciate your really respectful approach tonight, because I just think it's really important that we have thoughtful conversations about these things. So thank you, Amir. Really appreciate your question. Our next question comes from Nicola Robson.
Good evening, Treasurer. Can you tell me when the inflationary merry-go-round is going to stop? We need to get off. We're spending more because things cost more. And sometimes I think that prices are being artificially increased. What and when is the tipping point?
I just want to make sure I heard. Is your name Nicola Roxon?
No.
Nicola Robson.
Oh, I thought that is an uncanny...
former health minister.
Former colleague. Nicola, thanks for your question. Really, fighting inflation is one of the main objectives of the budget. And, you know, at the family level, the household level, it's all about getting these cost of living pressures down. You would know, it sounds like you follow these things very closely, that a couple of years ago when we came to office, inflation had a 6 in front of it. It's now got a 3 in front of it, but we need it to go a bit further and faster, ideally, because people are still under such pressure. And so what we've done in the budget is really a couple of important things. First of all, we've managed the spending in the budget in a very responsible way. You know, we turned 2 big Liberal deficits into 2 Labor surpluses. We found almost $80 billion in savings. We got debt down this year by $150 billion. That'll save us $80 billion in debt repayments. I could run through a whole bunch of...
But I'm just going to help with Nicola's question. You're asking if there's price gouging, essentially, yeah?
There's that, and also we're never going to be able to put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah.
Right, so you think it's out of control?
Yeah.
I think it's out of control, and it's got to stop at some time. When is the balloon going to burst?
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I understood the question.
Because it's, you think it's kind of cooked in now?
I think so.
Yep.
Yep, so the first thing is manage the budget responsibly, and that's what we're doing. The second thing is the way that we are designing our cost of living help puts downward pressure on bills and therefore downward pressure on inflation. We will get on top of this inflation challenge. You know, we've made really quite remarkable progress the last couple of years, but we've got further to go. And I'm confident that we can get it back down to more manageable levels. But it requires ongoing responsible economic management. It requires us to keep helping where we can with the cost of living in a way that doesn't add to inflation but takes the edge off inflation. And it requires us to build a more competitive economy, you know, with fairer prices and a fairer go for families and farmers at the supermarket. So all of these things are happening. I know that there's a level of impatience with the downward trajectory of inflation. I share it. You know, if I could
How frustrated are you? Come on, give us a sense.
Well, I think you and I hang out on Radio National pretty frequently, and we speak about this a lot. You know, this is a big objective of ours. We've come a long way. We've got further to go. I understand people are still under pressure, and that's really one of the defining motivations of the budget that we handed down 6 days ago.
If you're just joining us, you're watching Q&A Live with the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers. Next, we'll hear from Valerie Mowbray.
Good evening. I would like to know what sort of evaluation process this government will put in place for the Made in Australia projects. We, the taxpayers, are the underwriters to this plan and need a clear scoreboard to show transparently how our invested money is progressing.
Really interesting question, Valerie.
Yeah.
Treasurer?
Yeah, great question, Valerie. And the good news is that we've got a really robust and rigorous framework to govern these kinds of investments that we're making in the industries and the jobs and the communities which will power our future. You know, our future Made in Australia is really at its core all about grabbing the big economic and industrial opportunities that come from the fact that the world is transforming its economy in the context of net zero, you know, trying to become more energy efficient. And Australia's got a big opportunity there. You know, we've got the resources base, the energy base, we've got the skills base, we've got the industrial base, and we're attractive as an investment destination. But what it requires from government is not to try and replace all of that private capital and all that private investment, but to try and attract it and deploy it and make sure we've got the people and the technology to make the most of it. And that's what a future Made in Australia is all about. And I understand, your question is not that far from the kinds of questions that we grapple with behind the scenes as we put these policies together, because I want to make sure that we get value for money out of this, whether it's renewable hydrogen, refining and processing critical minerals. I was in Gladstone this morning talking about these opportunities in Gladstone for a really important region of Australia. And in other opportunities as well. We know we need to get value for money. I'm confident that we will, and that's because we've got a national interest framework which imposes, and the legislation will too, a very rigorous, very robust framework so that you can see the kinds of things that determine whether we invest some private money, some public money in order to attract this private investment.
Now, Australians have their own ideas about how to spend the billions of dollars allocated to the future Made in Australia policy. Our Q&A YouGov survey ranked medical science ahead of green energy and critical minerals. But the Made in Australia policy has overwhelming support, according to that poll, with almost 90% of those polled backing the investment. Valerie, I was overwhelmed by that result. Like when I read it, I had to check, wow, that is just such a high number of Australians saying that they think it's a good idea. Do you share the sentiment? I know you're concerned about the process, but do you think it's a good investment?
I think that it's a chancy investment, and I think that unless there are progressive assessments along the way, which I think we would all like to know and see charted somehow, and I mean, there will be duds. So
yes.
Are you going to throw out the duds straight away?
Yeah, it's a good question. Are you going to throw out the duds?
Well, first of all, Valerie, I think the good news for anyone who shares your perspective on this is if you look at the $23 billion we're investing over 10 years, most of it, the majority of that is in tax breaks. They're called production tax credits for renewable hydrogen or to refine critical minerals. And if you're worried about the riskiness of that, and you want to de-risk that, I can assure you and reassure you that people only receive those production tax credits in the event that they are producing. And so that takes some of the risk out of it. And so in the worst scenario that you might be contemplating, where we're not getting the kind of outcomes that we are prepared to co-invest in, if there's no production, there's no tax break. And so that's one of the ways that we've designed it very carefully to address some of the risks that you're identifying.
But you haven't addressed all of the risks that way. With the quantum computer, for instance, you gave that $1 billion, right?
No, we didn't.
Well, okay, explain what you did.
So we co-invested $470 million. The state government kicked in the same.
Okay, so yes.
In fairness to you, there's almost $1 billion
money.
in government. Yeah, I should be fair to you and say
Thank
that.
you. It's first time he's been fair to me, but
I'm not frequently fair to her, but on this occasion, $470 million, and that is to build the world's first commercial scale quantum computer.
But if it's a dud, we don't get the money back, do we?
Some of it is loans, some of it is investments, some of it is grants. And that's a good example because we grappled with that for months and it went through so many different processes. It had boards of technical people and legal people and foreign investment and all of those sorts of things to make sure that it was in our national interest, and I'm confident that it is. And that's because whether it's a Future Made in Australia agenda, including medical technology, but also renewable energy and refined critical minerals and the like, we have some huge opportunities in this country and we can't afford to waste them.
Thanks. Thanks for your question. We're just going to keep going with the questions we've got on the list. Now we have a question from James Schmidley.
Australia's high energy costs are a significant barrier to the competitiveness of our manufacturing sector. What specific policies or initiatives is the government considering to reduce power costs sustainably, rather than relying on subsidies to make our manufacturing industry more competitive globally?
Thanks, James.
Well, a really good example this morning, James, is when we went to Gladstone. We went to an area just outside Gladstone which has access to the port, to eventually renewable hydrogen, to a magnetite deposit. It had really all of the things that you think about when you think about adding value to our resources base. Manufacturing, in this case green iron, from all of those advantages that exist outside of Gladstone. And so when we were there today, it was really quite a stunning example of what a future made in Australia can look like if we get it right. Now, you're quite right to point to energy costs as a really key determinant of that. And one of the reasons for our enthusiasm for renewable hydrogen, partly because of the net zero opportunity, but also because we think we have such an abundance of opportunity when it comes to a broader range of energy sources, that the more of that we can get onto the grid, the more we can get prices down for manufacturers. Now, you would know if you follow the manufacturing part of our economy closely, and it sounds like you do, you know that gas has a role to play in manufacturing, but you also know that so much of the Future Made in Australia agenda is about getting those renewable energy sources, which will be the future of manufacturing in this country.
We have a question now from Avinash on our ABC News live blog. So thank you for sharing your question. And it goes like this. I have to share it myself, so I'm pretending to be Avinash. As our trading partners, including India and China, channel their investments into future growth sectors like chip manufacturing and AI, why do we continue to concentrate on mining and energy resources?
Well, we have to work out where our advantages lie. And our advantage lies at the intersection of industry, energy, resources, skills and investment. Those are the 5 big things, the 5 ingredients that we have. We have these kind of quite remarkable geological, geographical, meteorological advantages. And we need to make the most of it. And every country's got a different combination of things going in their favour. Those countries that were mentioned in the blog question, they've got scale. They've got enormous populations. They've got different advantages. And we need to work out where our advantages lie and how we make the most of it. That's what a Future Made in Australia is about.
Next, we'll hear from Imogen Bunting. Hello, Imogen.
Hi, PK. Hi, Jim. How are you?
Well, thanks, Imogen.
That's great. Better than me, I'm thinking. I'm a job seeker who has in the last 10 years experienced homelessness twice, including through COVID and the passing of my mother. I'm now a renter who saw my rent increase to $130 per week in one increase. How does the Treasurer think that a $9 increase per fortnight to Commonwealth rent assistance is helpful to me or to many others?
Thanks, Imogen.
Thanks for your question, Imogen. And I'm sorry that you've had all of those things happen in the last little while. And if there's anything I can do to help, in addition to the things I'm going to run through in a moment, make sure you let us know. When it comes to rent assistance, when it comes to job seeker, when it comes to all of these Commonwealth payments, one of the things that I'm proudest of in the last couple of budgets is the way that we have invested billions and billions of dollars into trying to make those payments a little bit better. And I do acknowledge, Imogen, and I'm sure there are other people in the audience in this boat, a lot of people would like us to go further. I do acknowledge that. I don't pretend otherwise. But what
Would
we have
you like
done,
to go further?
well, I have gone further in budgets that I'm responsible for.
But is that something that you would like, does that kind of keep you up at night, the job seeker payment?
Well, that's why we have increased job seeker. That's why in the last budget, that's why we increased Commonwealth rent assistance again in this budget for the second time in a row. And again, I mean, I don't mean to, I mean, I do understand that people would like us to go further. And as a Labor person and as a Labor government, we're always looking for ways, whether it's rent assistance, whether it's the permanent increase to job seeker, whether it's energy bill relief, whether it's cheaper medicines, or all of these other ways that we're trying to ease the cost of living. You know, so much of what we have done, it's our 2-year anniversary tomorrow, and so much of what we've tried to do in the first 2 years that we've been in office is to strengthen the social security system for people who are especially vulnerable. There's more than one way to do that. We have already acted on a whole range of different fronts. And obviously, as we can afford to do that in the future, obviously we'll look to do that where we can.
Imogen, just want to bring you back in. Obviously, the government is right. 2 years in a row, they have increased rent assistance. You're saying it's not going far enough. I know there's frustrations about the job seeker payment. Is that the one that you're...
Yes. $370 less than any pension payment. We are living under the poverty line. We're living under every poverty line. We can't survive. We are being driven into homelessness. $9 per fortnight increase in Commonwealth rent assistance alongside rent hikes in the highest inflated market in the country right now, that of housing and rentals. There is no way you're not driving homelessness of Australian citizens by ignoring the rate of job seeker.
Imogen's point, right? I think, Imogen, if you can allow me to, goes to the heart of, I think, really high expectations on Labor governments too, which you have to acknowledge, right? Like, I know that there's some frustrations about that because you've done a couple of things, but there's always a desire for more. Is it particularly hard at the moment? Because you represent really disadvantaged people.
Yeah, and that's why in the budgets that I've handed down, we've found billions of dollars to try and strengthen job seeker or Commonwealth rent assistance or energy bill relief. You know, the increase in Commonwealth rent assistance since we've come to office is about $60 a fortnight. About 40 of that is policy decisions, about 20 of it's indexation. Job seekers about 120 a fortnight. Only about a third of that is our policy decision, 2/3 of that is indexation. And I know that there is an appetite to go further than that.
You're not going to announce going further now, but can we just get some clarity? Do you have a desire to go further on job seeker?
What happens when we sit down and we put budgets together is we work out what is the best, most meaningful, most responsible way to help people. And in the budget last year, the job seeker increase and rent assistance. This time around, rent assistance, energy bill relief and cheaper medicines. And so we are always looking for ways to help people, especially people who are most vulnerable.
The next question comes from Sriram Gopalakrishnan.
Hi, Treasurer. Why can't the government put restrictions on the age for the social media participation? and make parents and schools watch for the inappropriate behavior online and get younger people corrected early in their life.
Sure. I just want to find out why you're so passionate about this. You've got your own experiences with this, don't you? What happened?
Yeah, because my daughter was in school a few years ago when she was being followed by somebody, unknown people on, her Facebook and things. Then I told her to shut down her book, account temporarily. And when she became a little bit older, I told her you can have it now. So, there are a lot of things like black web, dark web, or other people trying to lure youngsters and doing things, and which becomes a very big problem for everybody to manage their kids, to upbring them in the current area.
Yeah.
So we have restriction for voting, we have restriction for liquor, we should have something for this to happen so that the society is better.
Well, sure. It's funny you say that because some premiers are talking about that today. Chris Minns, I know that Peter Malinauskas in South Australia. Thank you for your question. Is that something you think is worth doing?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and it reflects, I think, the anxiety that a lot of parents have, but I think the broader Australian community has as well. And who really knows if we're getting it right? You talk about the decisions that you made in relation to your daughter. Patricia probably has similar kinds of things.
No, I'm not anxious about it at all.
Are
you anxious about it?
Of course. Of course. And who knows if you get it right. But I think in answer to the policy part of your question, obviously we're following very closely what the Premier of South Australia has been saying. We've increased funding for the E-Safety Commissioner, which is part of the story. We're also trialling right now, and there was money in the budget for this, new ways to kind of verify people's age online as well. Obviously, you don't want very little kids on social media, and we need to work out the best way as a society and as a government that we make that workable.
What do you think social media is doing to us? Does it it's completely messed us up, hasn't it?
It's pretty messy.
It's messy.
It's messy, yeah. And, there's a lot of upside, but there's a lot of downside too. And, for those of us who don't really have a choice, we have to be on there.
Professionally, but for young people?
For young people, it's
Do you think there should be a minimum age?
I personally do, but we've got to work out the best way to do that. There are already some age restrictions and when you sign up and all of those sorts of things, but one of the reasons why we're investing so heavily in the E-Safety Commissioner, one of the reasons why we've got these trials is to try and work out the best way to do it. I think as governments, as leaders, as parents, as people in the broader community, we're all grappling with this because we want to get the upside of social media without the really quite terrifying downside.
Can I just say, Logan Entertainment Centre, you have some great questions so far. Incredible night. Let's go to Adam Hansey now.
Howdy.
Hi.
Hi, Adam.
We've been told that we should be having more babies to counteract our ageing population. 2.1 babies per couple is the number often quoted as being required to ensure a stable population. What is the government doing to incentivise and support women and families to have more babies given the current situation in Australia?
Thanks, Adam, for your very topical question. And Patricia.
First, Adam, do you want to have lots of babies?
I've got one coming.
Oh, cool!
Hey.
Congratulations! I have to ask.
I'm not at 2.1. I'm not at 2.1 yet.
You're at nearly 1.
1.0.
You're cooking 1.
On the way.
But was it a hard decision? Like some people tell me, younger
Patricia,
people.
what are you asking me these very personal questions for?
He's my best friend, Adam Hansey.
Very eager and yeah.
Adam, but the world's obviously complicated. Things are expensive. Was it something you thought about?
Well, yeah, but what can you do about it? Like, I'm just trying to have babies and I don't know, doing the best that I can.
I love you, Adam.
Me too.
Thank you.
Okay, have 3, have 4 because I could only manage 2. Jim's had 3 though.
Well, Laura did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're there.
Yeah. Hey, Adam, it's a great question. It's so topical, partly because Patricia wrote a story on the ABC website today that people should check out, but also because in the lead up to the budget, I was asked about this and people said, in the context of an ageing population and the context of fertility rates being 1.6 or just higher than that, and you cite the 2.1 number, people asked me, should people have more kids? And the point that I made then and the point that I make again now is that it's expensive. And people are making different choices. And, You know, I don't want to tell people what they should be doing with their own family decisions, but I do want to make it easier if people make that choice for themselves, like you two have. And so when you look at right across our government, you know, and I work closely with a couple of great colleagues, Katie Gallagher and Amanda Rishworth, and with the Prime Minister obviously on this. You know, the way that we've expanded paid parental leave, the way that we're now paying super, or soon we'll be paying super on paid parental leave, the way that we've invested billions of dollars in early childhood education and care, the way that we're boosting wages in care economy sectors dominated by women, all of these things are about trying to make it easier for people to make that decision if they want to. I'm not going to tell anyone to do anything in that regard, and I think there's been a bit of kind of oversimplifying of my position.
Yes.
My view is it's expensive, people will make their own choices. My job as your treasurer is to try and make it easier to make the choice that you guys have made if people want to.
So not one for the country.
I don't use the same words about this that one of my predecessors, Peter Costello, used. You know, he put some of these issues on the agenda, and that's not the worst thing. I take a bit of a different view. I try to be understanding about the cost of living pressures that people are under. It's not cheap to have kids, as you are experiencing and will experience. And people are making a different combination of choices now, and my job is to support those choices in the ways that I've described.
Well, and good luck with Bluey being on high repeat in your household. Honestly, good luck with that. It is a good show. Next, we'll hear from Jenna Schrouder.
Good evening. Domestic and family violence safety advocates have been consistently calling for more to be done to address perpetrators, whether that's consequences or behaviour rehabilitation or support for men with mental health and addiction issues. Why does this government continue to ignore these requests and focus on band-aid solutions like extending the current program of giving money to victims, money that is not enough for housing and it doesn't address the root cause?
Yeah, thanks, Jenna, for your question. I agree with you that there's not one thing that needs to be done to deal with the issue that troubles all of us, which is that women are not safe in our communities. And you're right that one of the things we're doing is the leaving violence payment. We're also investing making another $1 billion, I think, available for housing for people fleeing violence. We are trying to invest more in frontline services. In the first couple of budgets, we made about $300 million available for services and frontline providers. And it is disappointing to you, I guess, and it is to me, certainly to me, that we haven't been able to roll all of that out. You know, we haven't been able to find the people to roll all of that out. But there are amazing organisations, including here, you know, the Centre for Women here, YFS and others, who are doing the sorts of programs that you're describing. And we do have a role, Commonwealth, state and local governments, in supporting that good work. We're making a lot of investments, but we're not yet making enough progress. And that's because...
And do you need to make more investments too, though?
We are always open to ideas.
Because there's a lot of frontline services that are saying they have to turn women away.
Yeah, I understand that, and I engage locally with some of those services. You know, as a local member, you know, to give you a sense of, you know, how we understand this challenge, you know, on a Saturday, you go to a lot of local events in our community and we've got police liaison officers, wonderful people, and you ask them, what will tonight be? And they'll say, tonight will be all DV. And I don't think there's an Australian who doesn't think this is a big problem that requires us to work harder. If that requires more investment, obviously we're prepared to consider that. But we've made big investments. Our job now is to make sure that we can roll them out in the most effective way.
And if this discussion is raising any difficulties for you or anyone you know, the numbers for 1800-RESPECT and the Women's Crisis Line are there on your screen. Next, we'll hear from Nola Simpson.
Good evening, Treasurer.
Hello, Nola.
Hi, Nola.
Hi. It could be argued perhaps that there's an over-reliance on taxing income in Australia and less attention to taxing accrued wealth that's not invested or used productively. As Treasurer, what are your views on this and any associated issues? How do we address those?
Yeah, Yeah, thanks, Nola. Obviously a very important question. There are two sets of things that we're doing to address what I think is a legitimate objective which lies at the core of your question. First of all, when it comes to income taxes, getting average income taxes down with these tax cuts which are being provided to every taxpayer from the 1st of July this year. Most of you who follow politics closely enough to be in a Q&A audience will know that earlier this year we substantially changed those tax cuts because we recognise there's a better way to return what's called bracket creep in the jargon by making it fairer, giving a tax cut to everyone right up and down the income scale with a bigger emphasis on middle Australia. And so on the income tax side, you'll see average tax rates come down in the middle of this year, which is part of the issue that you're talking about. On the other side, we are making some progress when it comes to making the non-income tax part of the system a bit fairer, whether it's for people with very big superannuation balances, whether it's the PRRT changes which passed the Senate during the week, which will mean more tax sooner from offshore gas industries.
Does there need to be more work, though, fundamentally on the mix between those two?
Yeah, there does, and we're doing that work. The PRRT, superannuation, there were more changes in the budget about capital gains for foreign investors. And that's because...
Will we keep seeing more of that going into the election cycle? Because I keep hearing this criticism that people want a bigger piece of reform.
Yeah, I understand that. And again, not to bore our friends here, but we talk about this on Radio National pretty frequently. There are two ways to go about it. There is what some commentators say that they want, and perhaps Patricia is in this school of thought, or at least wants to think about it and talk about it.
I'm listening to the people.
You're listening to, is a kind of a big bang change. Blow up the system and rebuild it. The way I go about these kinds of things is a bit more methodical. I like to think about these changes in a sequenced way, a methodical way, making sensible changes and bedding them down to address this challenge that I think you're right to raise with us tonight.
Okay, the next question is from Darshan Balasuria.
Hi, Jim.
Hi.
How does Australia justify spending $1 billion in military aid to Ukraine, a conflict that is geographically distant to us and one in which we're not directly involved, while facing a severe national housing crisis? Considering this money comes from the taxpayers, shouldn't our primary focus be on solving domestic issues first? I mean, a charity, after all, begins at home.
Yeah. Thanks for your question. Our primary focus is on the home front. And if you think about housing, you think about easing cost of living pressures, investing in Medicare and the care economy, investing in the future industries which will power the secure, well-paid jobs of the future. Overwhelmingly, the focus is on what we can do here at home. But that hasn't prevented us from being a good international citizen. I think the sorts of Russian aggression that we've seen in Ukraine is a threat to everyone, not just a threat to our economy. It's one of the reasons why we had this inflation spike, but more importantly than that, it's a threat to decency. It's a threat to order and the sorts of things that we hold dear as Australians. And so I understand there will always be, and I think appropriately, a public conversation about what is too much or too little when it comes to supporting our Ukrainian brothers and sisters. I think they've shown remarkable courage. And I am personally proud to be making a contribution to their effort, but not at the expense of all of the things that we are doing at home to make life easier for Australians.
John Urain is our next questioner.
Thank you, Patricia. The AUKUS budget announced by Prime Minister Albanese is $368 billion. If $1 million were expended each and every day, it would require more than 1,000 years to fully expend the AUKUS budget. When people sleep rough and some obtain their sustenance from garbage bins in my city, Brisbane, how is this expenditure justified?
Thanks, John.
Well, I think there are three parts to an answer to your question, John. First of all, governments invest in their own national security, and that's what we're doing here. Second of all, There are really important industrial benefits from this investment. Good, secure, well-paid manufacturing jobs of the kind that we've been talking about tonight. And thirdly, these investments haven't come at the cost of big investments in housing or a tax cut for every taxpayer or Medicare or all of these sorts of things. What we've been able to do by managing the budget much more responsibly and managing the economy responsibly is to find room for our priorities. And I think cost of living, obviously primarily, the future of our industrial base, very important to us. But our national security matters as well. Every responsible government makes big investments in national security. Our job is to make sure we get value for money and that we also get that industrial and employment benefit from it too.
I'm getting that you're not a big fan of AUKUS.
I'm definitely not a fan of AUKUS.
Who is?
Well, I don't know, but why?
Jim mentioned the benefits in industry and manufacturing, which I certainly don't support. The manufacture of weapons of war used in foreign countries, we seem to follow America into disputes offshore. The obvious cases are Afghanistan and Iraq, absolute disasters. And it seems to fit the narrative of the Americans for us to invest heavily in weaponry and war.
How about the idea of securing our region?
Yeah, look, I'm not opposed to us having a military, but that amount of expenditure, in my view, is just obscene. $1 million a day.
It is, Jim Chalmers, it is a big ticket item, and I do think in the community there are questions about that expenditure, right?
I understand that. And John's not the first one to raise it in those terms, and I respect you, John, for the way that you've raised it. And it's not your view is not unique, but it's not a view that I share. To be upfront with you, you know, every government is asked to invest in its people, its economy, but also its national security, and there will always be a range of views about the best way to do that. And I think this one is particularly contentious. But it is a big investment, but over a long period of time. In national security, nothing really kind of comes cheap. But I can reassure you, John, and everyone here and watching at home, that these big investments that we're making in defence are not coming at the expense of all of these other important investments, some of which I would anticipate that you'd support.
Okay, our next question comes from Zach Pennell.
Thanks, PK. On the upcoming Olympic Games, as someone who represents a Southside constituency, surely you can't be satisfied with the current stadium debacle, the scrapping of the rebuild of the Gabba, not when the reputation of Queensland and, dare I say, Australia is at stake.
Well, Zach, I think we're going to put on an amazing Games. And I think we shouldn't lose sight. I mean, there's obviously a legitimate argument about the best configuration of the stadiums and how much is too much or not enough when it comes to public investment, but I am supremely confident that we will put on an amazing Games here in South East Queensland.
Zach, what are you worried about?
I just think it's such an it's an incredible opportunity for the region, and it's so important that we get it right for the legacy infrastructure for South East Queensland. And currently, I mean, more so on the state side, but the bickering between the levels of government is not helpful. So I'm optimistic for the state, and
Yeah, me too. I'm optimistic about the state.
But are we going to have a substandard Games? That's what you're worried about. Are we? How embarrassing.
I don't think so. I don't think we will. And, you know,
Is it going to be better than the Sydney Olympics? This is the big question.
In front of this crowd, I have to say yes, of course it will be. I'm genuinely optimistic about it, but to go to the more specific part of Zach's question, which is about infrastructure, we work closely with the state government and with local governments to deliver, you know, world-class infrastructure. People have got views about the Gabba or Vic Park or what I used to know, having grown up around here, as QE2, but it's had a few names since then. And I remember when the Broncos played there at QE2 for a while when they were rebuilding Lang Park. Whatever the configuration of stadiums, we will get it right and we'll deliver a really good games. And you talked about the legacy. I think one of the most important things there as well is the smaller venues. You know, we'll be building one next door to here, about 300 metres from here, an indoor venue, which I think will be an important legacy for our local community, and it's a demonstration or a symbol, an example of what will be left behind after the athletes leave.
Thank you. And that's all we have time for. Thank you to our special guest, the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers. And thank you for joining the conversation, sharing your stories and your questions. Next week, Q&A will be coming to you from Sydney. Head to our website to register to be in the audience. It has been so fantastic to be here in Logan. Thank you so much for having us. We will be back. Good night.